Hello and welcome to NewsClick. In this segment, I would like to look at the impact of all this on cricket and in sports in general in India. Joining us for this discussion, as for the earlier segment, is Shankar Raghuraman, Associate Editor of the Times of India, well-known economist and sports commentator. Many times when the IPL is discussed, today it is spoken of as the second richest sports league in the world, presumably behind the NBA, and it's supposed to be making more money than the English Premier League. But a model which is often cited is that of the English Premier League. And yet, in many ways, the model of the IPL is perhaps closer to the American sports franchise models. Are we seeing in the IPL, as we see it now, the development of this franchise model moving closer to the US model than the European or British models?
Yes, I would think so. I mean, to begin with, for instance, the English Premier League, you're unlikely to have somebody who's from Manchester playing for, let's say, Arsenal. The rootedness of the club in the local milieu, despite the kind of money involved and the number of foreign players involved and so on, there is some tenuous linkage with the local milieu. In the IPL, on the other hand, we had, for instance, a match in which Delhi Daredevils was being led against Chennai Super Kings by Dinesh Karthik, who's a Chennai boy. Right. And leading Chennai was Suresh Raina, who's basically from Delhi's suburb of Ghaziabad.
Sure. And with the new Kochi franchise, nobody knows how many people from Kerala are going to be playing there.
Virtually none of the investors are from Kerala.
That's right.
So I think the IPL in that sense is not quite like, I mean, it's more like an American league where it's basically, well, players hired for cash.
In fact, there's recently been a debate in Britain about the English Premier League, because some commentators there are seeing that the English league itself is moving towards the American pattern, with investments coming particularly from American investors who are not so much concerned about the football aspects of the game or the sports, but use their investment to leverage loans and other such transactions elsewhere. And there are anxieties about the future of sports. And one of the issues brought up there is that in continental Europe, there is a rule requiring at least 50% of the investment in the club to come from the fans and the players' associations themselves. There doesn't seem to have been any thinking in India in the IPL franchises regarding this aspect.
Well, I think that depends essentially on what the purpose of the exercise is. If the purpose of the exercise is to promote the sport locally, to try and develop talent locally, then you would think along those lines. If, on the other hand, your purpose is essentially to maximize the profits from this whole exercise, which clearly is Mr. Modi's purpose, then all of that becomes irrelevant to the... So from Mr. Modi's point of view, it's not really relevant where the money comes from, as long as the pie just keeps getting...
What we are now talking about with regard to the IPL, it's also a carryover from the way the BCCI and the state-level sports associations, or at least most of them, have been operating. They've also not plowed back much money into the game. When they started making money, nobody knows how much of that money has actually been spent on developing sports.
Exactly. I mean, the BCCI claims that it has a development program, and that a certain proportion of its revenues are earmarked for that program and so on. But as we were saying in the earlier discussion, the fact that the BCCI's own structure is so opaque and we know so little about it, there is really no way in which we as sports fans can verify these claims. We have no idea exactly how much money BCCI has put into, let's say, a youth development program in Kerala or Goa or wherever.
The BCCI in the last 1 year, out of the thousands of crores of revenue that it made, has spent something like about 10 crores, which would be about 1% of its money in sports development. And sports development probably means some money invested in stadia construction.
Exactly. Now, since you brought up stadia construction, I mean, let's take the example of, let's say, the Firozshah Kotla, which has been rebuilt on a grand scale in recent years. The IPL in particular has driven the kind of rebuilding you're doing in stadia in a very specific direction. So you now have things like 40,000 rupee tickets, marquee tents and so on and so forth, closed air-conditioned boxes for VIP guests. So a lot of the money in redoing stadia is really going into creating these exclusive spaces for the well-heeled.
Sure.
Which, I mean, it might show up as development expenditure, but development for whom? I mean, how does the average sports fan gain from these? Well, see, one of the reasons why the spectator at the ground is getting such short shrift in India is because if you look at the numbers involved, I mean, even the biggest stadium in the country would hold about 1 lakh of spectators, right? Whereas the television audience that you're talking about runs into hundreds of millions.
Right.
Now, this would not be true, for example, in a country like Australia.
Yeah.
Where the Melbourne Cricket Ground can again hold
100,000.
100,000 spectators. And the overall television audience all over the country would be just a few million.
Yeah.
Right? And they have restrictions on, I mean, you must have noticed this when you're watching telecasts from Australia. Commentators will periodically talk about now local TV audiences can now join us.
Sure.
So they have restrictions on when the local channel can start telecasting, which encourages people to come to the stadium.
Yeah.
So there is a great deal of thought which goes into actually the live audience.
Doesn't all this really heighten the need for some form of regulation? Because let's not forget what's happening in Australia or England is because there is a body which views this, which takes decisions to structure the game, the way it is broadcast, the way it is handled, the sports aspects, everything from the public interest point of view. Where is such a body in this country?
The strange thing in India is that when it comes to getting telecast rights, the state is willing, or the state in the form of Doordarshan in this case, is willing to go there and say that we must have a right to telecast matches because they are in the national interest. But that notion of the national interest collapses when it comes to anything other than telecast rights. I mean, the BCCI is allowed to get away with the explanation that it's a private body and it's really nobody else's business how it runs its affairs, which is ridiculous. I mean, how can it be both in the national interest and not?
This lack of a public consideration, the lack of regulation from the public interest point of view is something that we are witnessing in business in general, but also now witnessing in the business of sports, and particularly in cricket. But a corollary to this is the public interest involved in the broadcasting, in the media. And something which is visible in this edition of the IPL is the advertising on television. We've got used to being interrupted at the end of every over, with commentators being interrupted mid-sentence. Now you've got advertisements being shown almost after every ball.
Exactly.
Once again, there is no restriction on this. There is no regulation in terms of the broadcast, no taking into account the public interest.
Absolutely. In fact, on the contrary, even the so-called strategic timeouts which have been devised, ostensibly they are to allow teams some flexibility in terms of tactics, allow them to speak to their coaches and so on. But the real purpose is quite clear. I mean, it's to provide another window for advertisers.
For longer stints of advertisements. Any last thoughts on this subject, Shankar?
Well, I mean, it's just amazing that something which is described as a religion in India, something which is described as the probably the most unifying force in this country and so on, should be able to get away with such complete lack of regulation. And it tells us something about the kind of society we are becoming.
That's right. Thank you very much